Hey, hello everyone. Eric Hurst here. It's Monday, and it's time for Training Cafe. Come on in, sit down, enjoy a cup of coffee with Coach Hurst. It's when we commune together and talk about training and climbing. And it looks like I got a little feedback here. Just let me see if I can shut that off. And we will proceed with the Training Cafe. Hope you had a good weekend. Here in Pennsylvania, the weather's been kind of so-so. There'll be a sunny, pleasant day, and then there'll be a cloudy, showery day. But that's the spring season here in the Northeast. And, for me, I'm kind of wrapping up my spring work activities and hoping to get to climbing someday soon. Here in Pennsylvania, most of the state's still kind of closed, though some of the more rural counties have opened up. And the good news is, though, I hear, European countries, I just got an email and talked to some friends in Switzerland. The climbing gyms are open. The crags are open. So they're back in business. I think Germany's loosening their grip, and hopefully Italy and Spain and France soon to follow. So all of our European climbing friends can have a good, hopefully, summer climbing season and a healthy climbing season, praying that the worst is past in terms of this COVID thing. It's, of course, unknown territory, so there's going to be some surprises. Everybody's talking about a second round next winter, which I'm sure is possible, but let's hope for the best. Maybe we have a herd immunity by then. Here in the United States, the western states are largely opened up. My climbing friends in Colorado and Utah and Wyoming are out doing their thing with distance, climbing in small groups. Is the kind of the MO of folks getting out. But all the science that I read says that this illness, this very contagious virus, is of course easily spread indoors, where we're breathing and filling the room with droplets with the virus, but outdoors with the breeze blowing and with things I guess very quickly spreading out. If you keep 6 feet social distance and you're outdoors, it sure seems like about the safest place you could be. And so with the exception of, greeting a climber face to face, which probably isn't the smartest thing to do, or maybe spotting somebody bouldering, if you're route climbing, you can keep that social distance. I guess only if you're in a car together, but traveling as twos in a car, that's a pretty safe scenario that even in the lockdown areas, people are doing. So I'm optimistic. I'm hoping that my wife and I will be traveling west in the next couple of weeks. And if you live out west, perhaps I'll run into you in some remote area in Wyoming or Utah or Colorado as I begin finally my 2020 climbing season. We've been talking here in the cafe about, trying to stay motivated, stay in shape, being in training mode while you're locked down at home, trying to stay strong at home. But you can only get so strong. Any given training cycle has a beginning and an end. And that's actually something I've been telling my sons who have been locked here at home in quarantine as well for the last 3 months. They were pretty strong coming out of the winter season and ready to go outside, and then couldn't go outside. And so they've been in training mode. And, something I've told them the last couple of weeks is, 1 or 2 more weeks of strength and power training isn't going to get you any gains that are recognizable. If you've put in a dedicated training block of 2 or 3 months, and for many folks, it's longer than that now. If you take the winter and now the spring quarantine season, you might be training 3 to 6 months. And no training cycle will provide sustainable growth over that time frame. It just doesn't work that way. And really, the better way to train, especially for a year-round sport like climbing, is to have short training blocks where you return from a trip, maybe take a week off to mend up mind and body, and then go into an intense training period for a month or two, and then go off on the next trip. and repeat that cycle. Climbing's not like soccer or many other sports where there's a on season and an off season. We try to climb year round, many of us, if we can, if the weather allows. And so you need to be smarter in structuring your training. And one of the worst things you can do is have a never-ending training block without a performance season. And that's kind of what I feel like I'm in and what my sons were in. And so they're packing the car and getting ready to drive west into the Rocky Mountains, into some remote climbing areas themselves, because there's not much more that can be achieved in the gym. In fact, I guess in the worst case, if you keep training strength and power on a hangboard, on a campus board, on a home wall for months on end without a break, that tempts injury. And so there's not much to gain after a long period of training, but there's actually something significant to lose, if you would get an injury of some kind. And so for them, I'm like, guys, it's time to taper your training for a week and then hit the road. And so that's the mode I will probably go into in the next week or two as we try to free up our schedule so we can go out and do some climbing. I enjoy training, but you have to get out and live life to the fullest. And it's not in your home or your apartment on a hangboard or bouldering wall. It's outside on boulders and crags of the world. And again, we'll have to do things a little differently this summer. We can't go to crowded areas. That would not be ideal, but to try to get spread out in more remote areas, that would be a safe scenario where we're not contributing to making the problem worse. We're hopefully helping make the problem better by getting away from our local communities and getting out into more remote, distant areas, and practicing social distance and good habits of cleanliness as best as we can. Okay, so enough rambling here about the current situation. Let's get to some of your questions here, and I want to thank you all for the feedback from the recent episodes. I did the episode outside last Thursday, which people seem to enjoy, and it seemed to come and go off well without a hitch. So that's something perhaps I'll do again. Maybe, what about a training cafe from the road where I'm out traveling out west, climbing somewhere, and see if I can get a good enough internet connection to do a couple of these from the road. Maybe that would be something interesting. I can kind of give you some insight into what I'm doing, or if I'm with some other climbers, what they're doing, and kind of give you a little bit of a inside look at things. If that sounds cool, let me know. Give me a thumbs up. Maybe we'll see if we can pull that off. Okay, a question. Just scrolling up here to look. I mentioned in a previous episode about a cheaper knockoff of Arm-Aid. Arm-Aid is this kind of clamshell device that is good for rolling your forearm muscles. I love it. We travel with it. And what I mentioned is that Arm-Aid, the company who invented this type of device for kind of attacking trigger points and rolling your muscles and, doing day-to-day tissue maintenance of your very important, muscles of your forearm. Arm-Aid actually knocked themselves off and made a cheaper model. And so the original model, I think, was over $100, and it had an orange ball which I really like. You could really roll it and target a trigger point, a knot that had developed, and try to release it and, kind of spread the fibers and get the blood flowing. They made a cheaper version. It has more of an orange, or I guess it's green foam roller that is a little less advanced. It's, you might call it, not a pro model, but an amateur model. And I think it sells for $60 or $70. So if you Google around Arm-Aid, you should see two models that are available. I don't know of another company that's making something like them, though I'm sure there is. I mean, whenever there's a clever device, somebody's going to knock it off. Okay, Charlie's asking about Charlie Skinner. That's a great last name, Charlie. How should weight and reps change throughout the 4-3-2-1 cycle in relation to energy system training? Yeah, the 4-3-2-1 cycle, that's a 10-week training program that I've presented in my books several books over the last 20 years. It's a way to organize your training where you have a 4-week block of more stamina, technique training, climbing, high volume climbing, but not high intensity, nothing heavy, nothing power oriented. It's more of a stamina aerobic block. And then the 3 is 3 weeks of strength and power, where you, in that 3-week block, you do kind of cluster all of your strength and power exercises, whether it's hangboard, weighted pull-ups, campus training, hard bouldering. And then the 2 weeks is power endurance or strength endurance. So that's the anaerobic lactic energy system, which is the energy system you kind of in a cycle want to train last right before you perform, because it spins up very specific adaptations for that give you more strength and power endurance. You do that for 2 weeks because it's highly stressful. You only need a shorter block. And then the 1 week is a deload, where you taper off your training and hopefully travel somewhere, because after doing this 4-3-2-1 cycle is an ideal time to do a performance period of climbing, whether it's a long weekend at some cliff or bouldering area, or whether it's a longer trip. This is a good training cycle to organize things. So depending where you are in that training cycle, during the 4 weeks of more stamina, everything is about submaximal high reps, lots of climbing, lots of movements, not pushing yourself to the limit. But the 3 weeks of strength and power, that's where you want to be doing much higher loads, shorter sets. If you're doing weighted pull-ups, you're doing 5 sets of 5 pull-ups. You're not doing body weight sets where you're repping out and doing 20 rep sets. That's more of a strength endurance. You would do that during the 2 weeks, where you rep out your pull-ups, or where you do Frenchy pull-ups, things like that are strength endurance, or repeaters on the hangboard is strength endurance. Those would be. So you really have to match the exercise protocol to what you are targeting in terms of the energy system. And my 3rd edition of Training for Climbing has templates and helps you organize and match exercises with the training block you're in. And also on my Training for Climbing website, if you go in there and go to the search bar and type in training programs into the search bar, it'll bring up an article which has free downloads of different training templates. I think I have them saved as Excel files or PDF files, but you can download those templates, and there's a beginner, intermediate, and advanced template that kind of maps out some guidelines and also specific exercise protocols and specific exercises that you can kind of piece together. You'll still need to put together your own program, but it gives you templates to begin from. And the templates match up with the 3rd edition of the Training for Climbing book. So download the free programs, get the Training for Climbing 3rd edition, and that book is available in English. It's got Alex Megos on the cover. And then there's the Spanish edition that came out a couple of years ago as well. And you can check that out. That's published by Desnivel in Spain. See this question here. From the UK, feeling stronger after weeks in the garage, but strength is no substitute for technique. Hey, that's true. He says that's the case on Gridstone. That's the case on pretty much all stone. Finesse, technique, climbing efficiency helps you get more out of what strength and power you have. You want to be as strong and as powerful as you can be, but you also want to be as efficient and proficient as you can be, because climbing is indeed a skill sport. And so that brings up a point I just made to my sons once again, if you don't mind me sharing some of the in-house coaching that I do with my kids. They're ridiculously strong. They can do many one-arm pull-ups, and they can hang on 20 millimeter crimp edges with one hand and hold a dumbbell in the other hand. They're strong enough to climb 515 if they had enough time climbing. But right now, their handicap is we live in an area where there's not a lot of hard climbing. We don't have 515s or even 514s in our backyard. We have nothing like that. We have to travel long distances, like perhaps you do, to get to world-class climbing. And, we travel certain times of the year so they can work on harder routes. So I can, get on some harder routes, although I'm climbing 513s, not 514s or 515s at my age. But in any case, long story short, I was just telling them, hey guys, you're strong enough to climb the next level. What you need is to get your climbing technique even more proficient and, to get your movement dialed back in, because being locked up here in the house for the last 6 months, coming out of winter into the spring quarantine, it's no replacement for being on rock and grabbing small rock holds and having to relax and balance and deal with the stress of the situation and stay calm. And it's so complex, outdoor climbing. And so while the strength in the gym does transfer out very quickly to boulders, if you're just going to try to do a V-hard boulder that's a few powerful moves, what you were doing indoors transfers more easily outdoors to those boulders. Taking it out onto rope climbs, completely different story, because for one, your aerobic energy system still needs to spin up. You can't train that perfectly indoors, even with a tread wall, as we have. You still need to get outside, but all the technical matters and all the tactical matters and the mental matters, you need to get out and rock. So my advice to them was, your first 2 weeks when you're out climbing in the West, just climb for volume. Don't settle in on a 9A project or anything crazy like that, but just learn to climb again and utilize the strength you have most efficiently. And then, after a couple of weeks of getting, adjusted to what outdoor climbing feels like, then pick out, a project or two and get to work. So that was my advice to them. That'll be my MO myself when I head out in a couple of weeks, and hopefully for you too. Don't expect to send your hardest ever route your first week back outside. You might be able to pull it off if you're heading to a boulder, but if you're heading to route climb, that's going to take some time. So some good advice there from Paul Fig. Greg's asking about collagen supplements. My company, PhysiVantage, we designed the first sports nutrition line designed specifically for climbers. There are other companies that are trying to cater to climbers, but they're just products that were generically developed or generally developed for athletes in general, and they're trying to, chase down a few climbers to buy their products. Our products, I designed with science of climbing, the science of performance nutrition, and dovetailed everything together to make climbing specific products. So I don't think there's anything out there that matches to what we are doing with PhysiVantage. Now, you go to Amazon, you go to the supplement store, you'll see a lot of companies selling collagen. A lot of it is sold to aging people to help combat wrinkles and hair loss and other, collagen structures of our body that diminish with age. Just like our tendons and ligaments, the collagen turnover slows with age. And so those products, though, are very flawed and incomplete. None of them are complete proteins, or few of them are complete proteins, because collagen powder by itself is not a complete protein. And most of them are not vitamin C enriched, which all the research with collagen is with hydrolyzed collagen that's vitamin C enriched, because that's a central cofactor for collagen synthesis to take place. What's more, PhysiVantage Supercharged Collagen, we've supplemented it with branched chain amino acids and a large dose of leucine, because leucine is a signaling amino acid. It's a trigger for protein synthesis in the body. It actually turns on protein synthesis. So by adding leucine to the supercharged collagen, we help turn on the process of protein synthesis in the body. And by the way, collagen powder by itself, raw collagen powder, is very low in the branched chain amino acids. So again, the generic collagen that you might walk into a store or buy off of the internet, maybe it works for skin and hair. I'm not convinced that the research is even that compelling, but it's a marketing scheme. But what we've done is designed a product based on research and fortified it and enhanced it in a way to make it more active in the body. And so that when you couple it with training, targeted training, whether it's finger training or tendon training elsewhere in your body, it becomes much more active and, in fact, effective. And my goal is to make supplements that work. And whereas most companies are out there just designing supplements to sell something. And of course, it's an industry that's rife with fraud. I'll talk more about PhysiVantage maybe in a future episode. I have a lot of people asking me those questions. I don't want to go off on that tangent right now, but while I think there are other collagen products on the market that might provide some marginal benefit to climbers, nothing will match to what we have designed. That is for sure. Brandon asked about soy protein. Is that bad for you? I wouldn't say it's bad for you. I mean, what's bad for you is being protein deficient, which a lot of strength to weight ratio athletes like climbers and gymnasts and runners and jumpers, where you want to get strong and powerful but keep your body weight down, a lot of them, just because they eat so sparsely, don't get enough protein. And that's just a huge mistake. It's bad for your muscles, your tendons, your organs. Your brain needs certain amino acids to make neurotransmitters. So, I mean, that's a losing proposition and will lead you down the path of dysfunction and underperforming. So you want to get enough protein. So any protein is better than not having enough. So if soy is your protein of choice, go for it. That being said, soy is not super high in some of the critical amino acids that we're after as athletes, like glycine and proline, which are very high in the collagen products, which we need for our connective tissues, is not very high in soy. The branched chain amino acids are there, to some degree, but not to the extent that they are in a good whey protein isolate, which whey isolate is the richest food on the planet for branched chain amino acids. I mean, eggs and skim milk are pretty darn good as well. But if you want to supplement, whey isolate would be the best for those branched chain amino acids. And by the way, what about taking branched chains by themselves? I'm not a fan of that. The research on that is equivocal. Again, a lot of supplement companies want to sell you the branched chains by themselves. But the fact is, to build proteins in the body, you need the full spectrum of amino acids. So the best case scenario is to have high branched chain amino acids and have all the other amino acids present as well, which is exactly what a good whey isolate product like PhysiVantage weapons grade whey is designed in that way. So it hits your body with the leucine that triggers the muscle protein synthesis, and the whole spectrum of amino acids are there to then go to work as building blocks around your body. So soy, not bad. It's good. It's a source of quality protein. But I think if you can broaden out and select proteins from different sources, that is always better. And post-workout, I think whey isolate is the best. And pre-workout or pre-tendon training, the supercharged collagen would be the best source of protein. And, collagen is pure protein. There's no fat, there's no sugar in it. So it's a very healthful, low-calorie way to get your protein. Robert's saying about eating more fat by way of vegetables and protein. And, again, if you're a vegan, you have to really know how to combine foods to make sure you're getting all those amino acids, because fruits and vegetables are incomplete proteins as a rule. And same thing with the fats. When you get the right kind of fats, you need to combine foods properly. I would certainly rather see somebody on a vegetable and fruit-rich diet than on a fatty, meaty diet. Nothing wrong with select cuts of meat if they're lean meats. But if you're, the common American diet of, sausage and bacon and fast food burgers and fried French fries and fried chicken, I mean, that's a death wish, not only to your climbing potentially, but to your body. It's just not a healthful diet to eat because it's high in all the wrong fats. And though it has a good amount of protein, it's a real calorie dense way to get your protein. And so that's the challenge for strength to weight ratio athletes, is how to get enough protein, that 1.2 to 1.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. How do you get that much protein without going overboard on calories? And so that's a challenge. And so if you are making your own meals and you are into cooking and you know how to combine lean cuts of meat and vegetables and fruits, you can do it without supplementing protein. Absolutely. But it takes time, effort, and knowledge. I guess for many of us living busy lives, whether you're in school or have a job, a family, and then you add in training and climbing on top of it, you don't have time to map out every single meal to be perfect. If you're a nutritionist, you probably have the time and desire to do that. But most of us just want to train and eat effectively. And that's where the protein supplements can come in and be quite handy to supplement your diet. Daily dose, 60 grams per somewhere, 60, 70 grams of fat. Yeah, I mean, 60 grams of protein, that I think would be for a male climber, the bare minimum. I know for my body size, that 1.2 to 1.8 comes out to between 80 and 130 grams of protein a day. So I shoot for 100 grams a day. That's my target. And there's no way I'm getting there without at least 2 servings of protein powder, 2 20-gram servings to get me there. I probably get about 60 in my diet, same as you, but I need to add supplemental protein to get up to that target of 100. You should do the math for your body weight and see where you need to be. But 60 is really low for if you're an average size guy, say 150, 160 pounds, that's a really low number and probably not enough for you to recover and strengthen optimally if you're training and climbing hard. Okay, Spanish version of Training for Climbing, which is, it's got a blue cover with red font text on it. Destinovelle, if you go to the website, has it. It's a bright blue cover, and it should be dated like 2018, I believe, was the year they translated the third and latest edition. Yeah, Greg, I don't do much personal training anymore. It's just my time is so limited. I did that off and on for many years, and I love working one-on-one with athletes. A few times a week, I get emails from people asking me to do that. And in very special cases, I will take on somebody and do a phone consult for an hour or two to help guide their path. But the best case scenario is to work with a coach that you can interact with regularly, whether it's via Skype or email or in person is ideal. And so there are a lot of coaches out there now selling programs. And I think that's okay for beginner athletes, but cookie cutter programs or just like follow this training program as you become more intermediate to advanced to elite. The level of nuance, it's just not going to be there. So I just don't think there's too much value in that. And that's where you do need to engage somebody that can work with you back and forth, either electronically or in person. And there are a number of coaches out there that do that quite well. I've referred people to Leif Gash from Substrate Climbing. You can find him on Instagram or on the internet. And also Chelsea Mern, Lady Beta Coach. She's on Instagram. Look up Chelsea. She trains a lot of climbers. I think perhaps mostly females, but I think she can certainly help anybody out. And there's others out there. I mean, Power Company does coaching and Climb Strong does coaching. And, there are, in most commercial gyms, have a coach. Now, not all coaches are created equal either. And so that's something that you, especially if you're a more advanced climber, you want to see who you're working with. Do they have a history of working with elite level climbers? Or are they just someone new starting off that might have the knowledge to help guide more of an entry level climber, but not a more elite climber? And so that's some homework you have to do on your own, and maybe contact 3 or 4 or 5 different coaches and ask them some questions. And see if you can find who seems to be the best fit for you. But I'm a fan of engaging a coach that can help you kind of cut to the chase and find the shortest path to becoming a better climber. Because if you try to do it all by trial and error, it's going to take you decades. Like it took me. My generation, we didn't have climbing coaches. There was no training material. I basically had to set out to create the training material. by pulling together ideas and information from a wide range of sources back in the early days, what other top climbers were doing, and then over the last 30 years digging into the research. And I've spent thousands of hours involved in reading the research, and more recently engaging the researchers and doing the research. And so I've developed this knowledge base, this intellectual property that is now available through my books and websites and podcasts and Training Café, which much of it I'm sharing for free. And I'm happy to do that, giving back to the climbing community that I love so much. So yeah, you can self-coach, but engaging a coach in the process isn't a bad idea as well. One arm hangs. I mean, doing one arm hangs on any board is more of an advanced protocol. I talked about this a few training cafes ago, that for most climbers, I am more of a fan of doing two-handed hangs, because you can then measure and know how much weight you're adding or subtracting. It's easier and safer on the shoulders. One-handed hanging takes a lot of base strength through your scapular stabilizers to be able to, stay in a safe position to do one arm training. But if you're strong enough, you could use any hold on a board, I suppose, and do effective one arm training. The Beastmaker 2000 is one of my favorite boards. I have about 15 different hangboards of different, generations down in my basement, some dating back 30 years. But the Beastmaker 2000, that is one of the best. I use that a lot. Road episode, Kevin says. Okay, there's one vote for the road episode. There's two from Mark. Thank you. Make it 3. So there we go. Guess we will be doing a road episode sometime soon. Noah's in there. Dan's in there. So that's cool. Okay, another question about PhysiVantage. How many servings of POWERPLEX are recommended in a day? POWERPLEX is a plant-based protein complex. It's not just one ingredient. I built this product from scratch using research and a really good food scientist. And we got it to be the most advanced plant-based protein, I think, on the planet, because we have amped the glycine. That's a collagen-specific amino acid that vegetarians tend to be very low on. And 1 out of every 3 molecules in your tendons and ligaments is glycine. And so you want to build and have collagen synthesis occur in your body. You need glycine and proline, because they comprise about 2/3 of connective tissues. And vegans and vegetarians are very low. Their diets are low in those 2 amino acids, which come from animal products. Supercharged collagen has boatloads of glycine and proline and hydroxyproline, which is why it is so good for tendon health. So we set out to build POWERPLEX as a vegetarian vegan protein supplement. It's primarily pea protein and rice protein, both organic sourced, non-GMO. Combined, they give a nice amino acid spectrum, including a fairly high amount of branched chain amino acids, over 2 grams of leucine in a serving of POWERPLEX. So not quite as high as in the whey isolate, but pretty darn high for a plant-based protein. And we amped the glycine, we added beta-alanine, and we added a microdose of creatine, because vegans, vegetarians are also deprived of creatine phosphate in their diet, which comes from red meat. And so you don't want to load creatine phosphate, but if you're a vegan or a vegetarian, a microdose a day would be helpful. And so POWERPLEX is a very complex formula, hence the name. It's a powerful complex. And I would say if you're not supplementing any protein in your diet from soy or from other sources, probably 2 servings of POWERPLEX a day is what you would want to do. 220 gram protein servings per day. And that will give you the amino acids to support both muscle protein synthesis and collagen synthesis in your connective tissues. So it's the plant-based athlete alternative to taking supercharged collagen before workout and weapons grade whey post-workout. Okay, should I sacrifice my outdoor summer to work a summer job to afford next year climbing trips, or just go ahead and climb and get the experience at. Yeah, that's a tough one. You know, I think the best case scenario would be to find a way to work to earn some money with a job and climb this summer, and continue developing your skill. Or if you can work a job and have access to a climbing gym, so you can continue to advance your skill and your climbing strength while earning the money, and then go on the mega outdoor climbing trip next year, perhaps. But that's tough. I mean, there's a lot of things there to that are influential in making that decision. I don't think I can help you out on that. There's so many different life issues going on there. So whatever you do, try to climb as much as you can, because you need to climb, especially if you're a younger climber. You need to climb a lot to develop the skill. Okay, from David. Okay, so new to hangboard training during the lockdown 3 times a week. You know, if you're new to hangboard training 3 times a week, you're going to get instant results because you've introduced something new to you add any new exercise to your program. Typically, if it's something that is targeted, you know, climbing specific and novel, you know, it's new for you, your body will instantly respond and get stronger. Now, that doesn't go on forever. And that's why, you know, training plateaus, and you need to, of course, you know, change up your program and, you know, modify your training, keep it progressive. Okay, so here's the second half from David. Is it a bad sign or normal that when I max hang, the joints hurt for 2 to 4 seconds, then they're fine? Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, you know, the weighted hangs are hard on your fingers, no doubt about it. You know, you're putting extra load on your body, and that's what, of course, then triggers the adaptations, the stimulus. Now, the first thing is, David, if you are new to hangboarding, then your first experience on the hangboard really shouldn't be weighted hangs. And maybe you didn't say weighted, maybe you said max hangs. But typically when people are talking about max hangs, they're either doing really small edges that it is hard, you know, to hang on for 5 to 10 seconds, or they're using a little bigger edge but adding weight, enough weight so that it's hard to hang on for between 5 and 10 seconds. That's the max hangs protocol. And it's great for developing maximum strength and long-term connective tissue, tendon and ligament strength. However, for somebody new to hangboard training, if you go right into that program, it's often, well, it can be dangerous and injurious. And so when people ease into hangboard training, I say, you know, do body weight exercises, don't get sucked into small holds or pockets, you know, just get used to hanging on a hangboard with your feet dangling. Because, you know, when you're climbing, your weight's spread amongst 4 appendages most of the time. So your fingers are carrying just a fraction of the load, but you're hanging on a hangboard, feet dangling. It's all on your fingers, obviously. And so, you know, you might have gone at it too hard too soon. And I think, you know, when you start doing max hangs, that should be kind of a year 2 hangboard program after you've done a lot of more intermediate level hangboard training at body weight or less, or on modest holds, and doing like 7-3 repeater protocols as a kind of icebreaker for a few months before you move on to the max hangs, which again are much more stressful. Now, that all being said, what you describe as pain in the knuckle after you like let go for a few seconds doesn't sound like the typical pulley injury, which you would feel if it's an A2 pulley here, or more commonly on the ring finger, or A4 pulley up in here. You know, if you get pain in those areas, that is more a sign of that pulley starting to degrade. And as I've demonstrated, maybe begin to rip or break, and eventually it can rupture completely in a worst case scenario. So I'm not sure that's what's happening to you. Now, there are the ligaments that connect the bones that are loaded and adapt. And so I would say it's time for you to take a few weeks off from the hangboard and see if the pain goes away. hopefully it does, and therefore it's just kind of a short-term response to the increase in training. I often compare starting a hangboard training program for the first time to starting to run for the first time. Somebody buys a pair of running shoes and gets into running, and then they start running 5, 6, 7 days a week, and before long they have shin pain, knee pain, ankle pain, foot pain. There's all kinds of things going on because their body just hasn't had time to adapt to this new stimulus. So you got to ease in to new training protocols, and especially the hangboard can be stressful. Don't forget, rule number 1 of Eric's Train Club, repeat after me. Don't get injured. So take it from the Train Club. Don't get injured. That is the number 1 rule. Okay, I'm at 42 minutes here. I guess maybe it's time to wrap this up, but I see more votes here for road episodes. Yeah, somebody mentioned the lattice coaches. Definitely what I like about what those guys do is they try to collect some data on you before they provide a training program. So that's a great thing to do. Now, it's ideal if they were testing you rather than you testing yourself. You're going to get better results because getting good quality testing results requires that you do a proper warm-up. You have 2 days off prior to the warm-up or prior to the testing. Temperature, ambient conditions influence the testing, rest, and there's a lot of things. If you're going to test and get meaningful results that you can retest and compare results, everything else ought to be controlled and done the same, or else it becomes kind of meaningless. But those guys are on kind of the frontier of trying to do a lot of this stuff, and it's all still evolving. And I think year over year they're getting better at it. We're all hopefully getting better at it. And so you can reach out. They are of course UK based, but can work with climbers just about anywhere. Griffin says he takes POWERPLEX every day for breakfast. Glad to hear that, Griffin. We have a chocolate and a vanilla spice flavor. One thing I ought to say, if you're out there and you're pondering trying the whey protein versus the plant-based protein, and they're different. The whey is a milk-based protein, and of course the POWERPLEX is a plant-based protein. And when you make proteins from milk, they taste better. That's just the nature of milk products. And now there's no lactose and there's no fat in our whey isolate. So it's a very clean protein derived from milk and cheese, but it's distinctly different, of course, from a plant protein, which coming from peas and rice isn't, the ideal starting point for making good flavors, let's say. And so, comparing the taste of a whey protein to a plant protein is like comparing ice cream to sherbet. They're not going to have, they might both taste decent, but the milk protein is going to taste better for most folks. And so the plant protein, we spend a lot of time to try to make it to work because, I know the reputation of pea proteins is they taste like mush. And I didn't want to make a product that tastes like mush. So we spent a lot of time, working with the food scientist that knows flavors. And we came up with 2 pretty darn good ones when it comes to pea protein. But if flavor is important to you, then I would steer you towards the whey protein because that is a richer flavor. When I drink it, it's like a dessert to me almost. Whereas the plant protein I drink and it's like, okay, it tastes okay, but I don't view it as a dessert. I view it as a very healthy source of 20 grams of protein. And so that's ultimately what we're after is the function of the food, not the taste. But, if you're doing it daily, it's nice to have a decent tasting food as well. And so, I should probably do a whole episode of nutrition instead of weaving in and out of these topics here. And I think I will probably just wrap this up instead of digging into any new. I see a couple of comments there or questions about injuries, but they are kind of demand longer explanations. And I'll tell you, when it comes to any injury, if it is acute and getting worse or long-term and getting worse, see a medical professional. Don't talk to a climbing coach. Climbing coaches like myself have a lot of experience. I being in the sport this long have witnessed or experienced myself every injury under the sun, it seems. And I've talked to many doctors, seen many doctors. been through the testing, and in the last 5 years, attended the conferences that the doctors and surgeons are at, and am friends with some of the top doctors and surgeons in the world. So I feel like I'm pretty knowledgeable, but I'm still not an MD. I shouldn't really be diagnosing injuries. So I try to steer people in the right direction and give them quality advice as a coach that has knowledge of this topic, but there's no replacement. Again, especially for an acute injury or one that's worsening, you need to get to the bottom of it. So just don't take advice from your climbing friends and coaches, but go to a qualified PT, or better yet, medical doctor that's experienced with working with athletes and ideally climbers, and that is the best case scenario. Okay, so we got 45 minutes of Training Cafe in the books. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Keep the feedback coming, keep the ideas coming, and I guess the consensus is we should do a couple of training cafes from the road this summer, so let's plan on it. So for today, I will sign off, and we'll see you on Thursday. Until then, Hurst out.